Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to my channel and another project. In this video, I'm going to be looking at this pretty beat up but potentially beautiful walnut piece. It's a two-tier dresser with some really beautiful wood grain, and just like I mentioned in my last video, this piece has absolutely no finish on it, which is really strange. There's a little bit of damage on these trim pieces. The hardware is actually solid brass, so that's going to shine up really nice. I love this wood grain on this drawer right here. It's beautiful walnut. I think it's burl. I'm not sure. It looks kind of burl-ish. But looking up here, you could see that there's a little bit of damage on the drawers. There's this chunk that's missing out of this trim piece right over here, which I'm gonna have to fix. There's these huge gash marks that are in the top over here. The foot over here needs replacing, the little trim piece around the foot, and the veneer here on the substrate is just completely peeling off on every single drawer and on most of the piece, so I gotta fix that. Looking inside the drawers now, it's covered in a beautiful walnut veneer. Every drawer has a walnut veneer in it. And this weird white stuff, I'm not really sure what that is. It's in every single drawer. And you can see this is made by Griswold Guest Company, which is a company that was started in 1915 by Joseph Griswold and Maynard Guest. Alright, so sit back, relax, and let's see what I can do with this. And just like any other project, I'm going to start by removing all of the hardware. And I actually like this hardware. This hardware I'm definitely going to be keeping and polishing it up. Now, one thing about the hardware is if you see right here, there are these two little prongs. I forgot exactly what they're called, but they basically secure the knob into the wood so it doesn't twist and turn. So while you're removing hardware from a piece, you always want to make sure that you're not twisting the knob, you're unscrewing the screw itself, because you could scratch a hole around into the drawer face. And as has become tradition, I'm just going to take my solo cup here and put all my hardware into it. And on these particular pulls right here, they were screwed, and also there was a nail right here in the bottom. So you always want to be careful when removing hardware, because you never know exactly how they were attached to the drawer face. Now I'm just going to start cleaning this piece, and this piece was so filthy, oh my goodness. Like I said, this piece had no finish on it, so all of that dirt and debris was just stuck onto the wood grain, and yeah, it was just really gross. And I cleaned pretty much every square inch of this piece. I cleaned inside the drawers, I cleaned the outside, the inside of the frame, the feet, just everything needed a good cleaning. And I'm just starting with some repairs here. Like I said in the intro, this was most of what had to be done to this piece. Pretty much every single drawer, top and bottom, had to be glued up, along with the sides of the piece on the bottom, along the trim work. I mean, there was pretty much no spot where I didn't have to glue up. And as you can see, I'm just putting the glue along the crack, and I'm pushing it in down as deep as I can with my finger, pushing it all the way down in there, so when I clamp it, it's going to completely glue that together. And I had to do only 2 drawers at a time because I only had enough clamps to do 2 drawers at a time. There's a saying that you can never have too many clamps, and it's pretty much never been truer than right now. This process took a pretty long time because I had to glue up 2 drawers at a time, wait for that to dry, then move to the next 2, wait for that to dry. And yeah, it was just a very long process. I mean, that's what most of this stuff is, working with furniture. Most of the time you're just waiting for things to dry. And I just wanted to show you guys really quickly this shot right here. the veneer is absolutely super thin. And that's the case most of the time when it comes to furniture that's veneered. The veneer is usually very thin, so you got to be very careful when you're sanding that you don't want to go through that veneer. Here I'm just removing the back panel so I can get to the screws that hold this two-tiered piece together. And just giving it a nice quick vacuum because there was a lot of dust and dirt and spider eggs and just a lot of grossness. And when I'm finished with that, I'm going to be taking this really handy tool attached to my drill that allows you to get into really tight spaces when you're trying to unscrew things. And I'm just going to begin removing that top tier. Alright, the top tier is off, and now I'm just having a little look at what was underneath there. And of course it's not finished, but insides of pieces rarely are, so that's no problem. And before I get to working on the top, I'm just going to fix this one little piece of this drawer that broke off. Luckily the previous owner kept it for me, so that's a good thing. And I'm just going to be gluing it down, wiping it, and clamping it up. And now I'm going to start working on the top. So since this is already bare wood because it's completely unfinished, I'm just starting with a 180 grit and I'm going to be finishing with a 320 grit on everything. So the drawer faces, the top, the sides is all going to be 320. And there are a couple stains and marks on here that I can't get out with sanding because it's a veneer and I don't want to burn through the veneer. So I'm going to be using some oxalic acid. Oxalic acid is basically just a wood bleach, and you're going to mix them into hot water and stir it up until it pretty much stops absorbing. And I usually use a chip brush to apply it to my projects. And with oxalic acid, you want to apply it, let it completely dry, and then you're going to want to wipe it off a couple times, probably 2 or 3 times with a wet towel. And here I'm just giving the drawers a nice quick light sanding so I could apply the oxalic acid to them as well. And getting into some more repairs here. The entire underside over here was completely coming apart, so I just glued that up, wiped it down, and clamped it up. And while that's drying, I'm just going to begin sanding the sides. Now, one important thing I do want to mention is you could see that I'm flipping this piece over. When you're flipping your furniture on its back or you're flipping it on its side, you always want to make sure that you're picking the piece up off the floor and not rocking it on its legs, because it's very easy for those legs to crack or break. So just a little tip. For the trim pieces and all of the curved areas, I'm going to be using a sponge pad from Surf Prep, which makes it so easy to sand around contoured edges and all those hard to reach areas that you would normally have to hand sand. Alright, getting into some wood filler now. There were tons of spots on this piece that needed wood filler. And with wood filler, all you want to do is just pack it into the area that you're trying to fill, and then just even it out. And you want to leave it a little bit proud on the surface so that when you sand, it'll be flush to the surface that you're sanding. Yeah, there was a lot of things that needed wood filler on this piece. Just filling up the 1,000 cracks that were in this little plate on the front. And while that's all drying, I'm going to begin my main sanding. And as you can see, I'm using the pencil trick again, which if you've seen my other videos, you'll know that this trick is great for using on veneer, because as you sand over the lines, as the lines disappear, you're going to know that you've sanded just enough. This is going to help you get a nice even sanding, and it's also going to help you from burning through that veneer, which if you remember, that veneer is very, very thin, so it's very easy to burn through veneer. And there's a few spots that I missed on my first round of wood filler, so I'm going to come back in and patch those all up. And I'm going to begin working on the drawers. Just adding wood filler wherever needed on the drawers as I go. Just sanding the inside of the carcass here, making sure it's nice and clean. And after that, I'll be moving on to the feet. There was some white paint on the underside of the dresser, so I just took a lead test kit and I tested it for lead. It was negative, so I just sanded it all off and it was good to go. And I'm just doing another glue up over here. And I'm telling you guys, I had to glue up literally every square inch of this piece. The gluing was never ending. Basically, wherever there was veneer, I had to glue. Just sanding down this little bottom trim area because there was a bunch of paint splatter, and I want to make sure that that's all gone before I put my finish on. I'm going to be using Quickwood wood epoxy to fill in those broken pieces on the trim on the drawers, as well as fixing those broken pieces on the feet. And I know I explained it in my last video, but just in case you haven't seen that video, Quickwood is basically a wood epoxy that is a two-part epoxy that you mix together until it's one solid color, and then you just apply it to whatever area you're trying to fix. And it's basically kind of like adult Play-Doh. It's very moldable like clay. And you have about a 15 to 25 minute window before it starts to set and get hard. But when it does get hard, it actually is harder than wood, which is great. I love this stuff. I actually use it quite a bit. Alright, so here I just have to make a mold of these feet, and luckily for me it's one round disc pretty much, it's one round shape. So I'm just going to put a little bit of a lubricant on here because I'm going to be using hot glue, and I don't want that hot glue to stick to the wood. So I'm just going to make my mold here, making sure that the glue gets down in between that little crack. Wait for it to dry, and then I'm going to be pulling it up, and do this part carefully because the hot glue can actually rip or tear, and it came out pretty good. So now I'm just going to put my Quickwood into the mold and stick it to the side of my leg. And after it's dry, I'm going to take my angle grinder here and I'm just going to take off all the rough spots and give it a nice quick sanding, and then move on to the next leg. And for the next leg, I actually recruited my dad to come help me out, and he just molded it by hand. Now with this, you just want to get the rough shape because you got to remember you're going to be sanding this down later on. So as long as you get the rough shape of whatever you're trying to make, you can always sand it down to the final shape afterwards. Alright, so while that Quickwood is drying, I'm just going to come in and sand my patches that I made with the wood filler. And this is going to be my final sanding of 320 grit. I also sanded down the entire drawer box inside and out. And I don't know what this white stuff was inside of every single drawer, but it's weird. I don't know. It's not paint, but it's like some kind of film. It could be from where they stored it, some kind of reaction with the wood, but I'm not really sure. Very strange. And just doing a couple more repairs here. And I forgot to fix this little chunk that was missing off of the front trim, so I'm just going to do that quick and mold it into shape. And after a couple of hours of drying, I'm going to come in and sand down that Quickwood. I think it came out pretty good. And now it's time to stain. For the stain, I'm going to be using an Odie's oil, pigmented oil. And if you can't read that, that says Up in Smoke, which is the color that I'm going to be using. And all I did was mix it with a little bit of safer solvent, added my pigment, mixed in some Odie's Super Duper Everlasting oil, and it was ready to go. Now just a little tip, if you ever get stain on a piece of wood that you're not trying to stain, you can either use mineral spirits or you can use Odie's Safer Solvent to just rub that stain right off. And you can see how great that quick wood came out. You can barely even tell, especially when the stain goes on. You're never going to be able to tell that that was an actual repair. Now I just have to paint these decorative areas on the drawer face and on the side of the piece, on the trim. And I chose to use Fusion Mineral Paint in the color of Cold Black. And I think this is going to give a really nice contrast between the dark, rich, reddish brown of the walnut. And of course, I forgot to sand down the quick wood before I started staining, so I just sanded that down flush and then put my stain over top. And if you've seen my other videos, it should come as no surprise that I'm going to be using Odie's oil for my finish. Odie's oil is a tung oil based hard wax oil finish, and it's one of my favorite finishes to use on wood. You want to mix this stuff up really good. And a good comparison that I've heard is you want to mix it up until it's almost like liquid honey. And a little goes a very long way with this stuff, so you don't want to apply too much of it. All you're really going to want to do is apply some to your surface, take a Merkur Milan pad, and you're going to want to, in circular motions, rub this down into the wood grain. And you can see that beautiful walnut wood grain just start to pop. It's coming out so nice with this Odie's oil. And if you have any hard to reach areas, you can always take a Q-tip and dip it in some Odie's oil and just rub it right into those cracks. And after letting the Odie sit for about an hour to 2 hours, I usually leave it on for about an hour and a half, you're going to want to buff it completely off. A really great trick that I've learned is if you take 3 fingers and rub them across the surface, if you have streaks or trail lines, you haven't buffed enough. You got to buff until everything is completely gone. Alright, only 2 steps to go. I just got to do a little bit of color correction on all the spots that I used wood filler, which is quite a few. I'm going to be using a combination of Mohawk's Blend All sticks and Mohawk's brush tip graining markers to hopefully get a pretty good color match. And yeah, this drawer was pretty chewed up. There was a lot of veneer missing off of that one side over here. So I'm just going to take my Mohawk Blend All stick and I'm just going to get a pretty close color match. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just making the base layer. And on top of that, I'm going to put a darker color, which is going to more closely match the veneer color. Now these 2 scratches that were on the top, they were carved into the wood at a very strange angle. So I'm going to have to be a little bit creative in the colors I use in order to blend them into the wood to make them less obvious. And it came out looking a little bit strong, so I'm just going to wipe a little bit of it back and I'm going to get the perfect result. Well, not perfect, but close enough, definitely. And here I'm going to be using a combination of the Blend All sticks and the markers. And I'm using the Blend All stick basically to make the base layer. And once I get that color pretty close, I'm going to be using the graining markers to continue the grain line and make a seamless transition between the wood and the patch. Alright, and the final step is doing the hardware. Now all I did for this hardware was I just scrubbed the heck out of it with some Brasso. Now one thing I do want to mention is I did let this soak in a little bit of a Brasso bath. Now if you do this, you want to make sure that what you're working with is solid brass and not plated, because if it's plated, it can actually start to eat away at the finish. And you can see here, it definitely did help, but I could do better. So now we're going to move on to using some Meguiar's compound. And this stuff is really going to take off that tarnish, whatever tarnish is remaining after the Brasso, and bring out the beautiful luster in the metal. All I'm doing is just applying some to the surface of the hardware and using my Dremel tool with a cotton wheel to buff it out. This process is definitely kind of tedious and it can take a little while, but it's definitely worth the final results. And yeah, as you can see here, it's definitely quite a difference. Alright, now that the hardware is all polished up, I'm going to just install it. And one thing I just wanted to mention really quick is the inside of the drawers I didn't film, but I did seal them using Odie's Super Duper Everlasting Oil. So I just want to thank you guys for watching another video, and let's take another look at this old, dusty, dirty piece one more time before the final reveal. This piece was practically falling apart. The veneer was tearing off. There was broken feet. There was broken trim. It just needed a whole complete refinishing. If you like this content, feel free to subscribe and like. I try to put out a video once a week. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and let's take a look at the final results.